All right, welcome back, everybody. Today, I want to talk a little bit about how we can use Docker in order to run RStudio, which we do all of our analyses and stuff in, right? Use Docker to run RStudio, and then that way we would be able to run this on things like the cluster or on a computer and have different R environments kind of set up. So the first thing that we'd have to do is search for Rocker. So our Docker is thrown together in this image called Rocker. So in the Docker desktop, once that's all installed and everything, we can go ahead and we can even select which version we want to install. So the latest one is 4.3 something. There's 4.1, which we had to go back and do for the spatial transcriptomics in situ type version. But if we go ahead and select 4.3, then we can go ahead and pull this image. So what it's going to do now, if we close out of this, it's going to go through and download this Rocker RStudio image to our computer. So this is kind of like a Conda environment, but more or less system-wide. So Docker will have inside of it, let's see if I can open this up. Like Ubuntu, for example, will be the host operating system. We'll have to wait for it to finish downloading. And then in Ubuntu, it will be able to install everything that goes along with whatever application that you want to run. And in this case, it's RStudio, and it'll have all the dependencies and everything needed kind of tacked along with it. But it's very clean, so there's nothing extra installed on top of this. So if we go ahead and open up RStudio, let's see if we can find in here which version of, so it's running Ubuntu in the background, and then RStudio server in the foreground. You can see here all of the things that it has installed that will allow us to run RStudio. If we go back to images, this is something that has hung me up for a really, really long time. So if we click run, we'll be able to actually run our new image. We have to specify some other settings. So this is where I was getting hung up in the past trying to run an RStudio environment. If we go ahead and open this up, we can specify our host port. So this is going to be like in the browser. Let me go ahead and grab one here. If we specify local host here, if we specify something like local host, you can see here we have errors and stuff where I wasn't able to get it working. But this here, that last bit, local host, is the port that we're actually going to be running on. And so what we need to do is we need to tell Docker, okay, on my Firefox or Google Chrome browser, I want this extension, 8787. We'll put that in there. Let me move my mouse for you. I want that to be the address that I type in, and it's going to then redirect inside the Docker container to 8787, which is awesome. Then we can also do some volumes. So what this is on your computer, the path to a folder that you want to mount to the RStudio environment. So in our case, we have been working in this Cosmics folder for spatial transcriptomics. And then what we can do is specify in our container, in our Docker RStudio container, where do we want this folder to live? So we can go do something like home, and then also call this Cosmics. So now when we go ahead and run this, it's going to start up a RStudio server. So instead of opening RStudio on your computer, you're going to open RStudio in the web browser, and it's going to be at the port 8787. You can see here we have our host, and then we have our container. So go back up here to localhost. What we can do is type in 8787. Whoops. Localhost 8787. And it'll open up RStudio, which is super, super nice. This is super helpful if you're running something on a cluster That local host will then be whatever the IP of that cluster is, or the name of the cluster node that you're running on. So you'll have to talk to probably an IT person in order to understand kind of the structure that they have for the cluster. But that's what will go there. And then you still tack on just this 8787. And when you go to that, then you end up here. The default username is just RStudio. And then the password it gives you here. You can also set a password. It kind of tells you how to do that in the directions. But since we're running in Docker desktop, I always just leave it default, whatever it spits out as the password, random characters and numbers. I just take that and we can type that in here and then sign in. We don't need to save it because it's going to change next time. And then what we can do, let's see if we can go home. We'll get to the Cosmics folder. So if we do type this and then okay, so it's going to go up a folder level. Then we can type in the dot or click the dot. It didn't work. Maybe just the dot. So // it's going to go up a level, and then we have our Cosmics folder. If we go to home, now we have the correct home. Now we can go to our Cosmics folder just like we normally would, and we have all of our files. So we have our data files that we were working with. We have our R scripts that we were working with. We have our environment here. And then we can even set our working directory. So if we do set working directory WD, and then here we can do // again. And if we press tab, it'll give us our two options. So we can work in RStudio or Cosmics. So we'll work in Cosmics. So now if we do list.dirs, let's see if it lets us search. But anyway, so the main point is here, we're actually able to run inside Docker, so running potentially on a cluster, our projects. So this will allow, probably if you have a laptop or something like that, you to do much bigger analyses. Now you have so much more RAM available to you. So this is just on my computer, but if you have it on the cluster, you have so much more RAM available. You have probably more cores to do your analyses. It's a great deal. So yeah, if you found this helpful, let me know. It's something that I plan on working on for work, building a script that'll launch one of these Docker containers on the cluster and then give you the address. That way, if you're working remotely, you're able to still work in RStudio and you don't have to worry about data coming down or data going back up to the place where the data lives. You can work right on the cluster and have the data right there. No need to download it to your laptop to do your analysis. So yeah, let me know what you think.